Afternoon. I call the meeting of the Community and Public Safety Committee to order. It is Tuesday, March 25th at 2:32 p.m. Keelan, can you please call the roll?
Good afternoon. Smith.
Here.
Murillo.
Here.
Zimmerman.
Here.
Canal.
Here.
Novick.
Here. Christopher, can you please read the statement of conduct?
Welcome to the meeting of the Community and Public Safety Committee. To testify before this committee in person or virtually, you must sign up in advance on the committee agenda at www.portland.gov/council/agenda/community-and-public-safety-committee or by calling 311. Information on engaging with the committee can be found at this link. Registration for virtual testimony closes 1 hour prior to the meeting. In-person testifiers must sign up before the agenda item is heard. If public testimony will be taken on an item, individuals may testify for 3 minutes unless the chair states otherwise. For today's meeting, testimony will be 2 minutes per testifier. Your microphone will be muted when your time is over. The chair preserves order. Disruptive conduct such as shouting, refusing to conclude your testimony when your time is up, or interrupting others' testimony or committee deliberations will not be allowed. If you cause a disruption, a warning will be given. Further disruption will result in ejection from the meeting. Anyone who fails to leave once ejected is subject to arrest for trespass. Additionally, the committee may take a short recess and reconvene virtually. Your testimony should address the matter being considered. When testifying, state your name for the record. If you're a lobbyist, identify the organization you represent. Virtual testifiers should unmute themselves when the clerk calls your name. Thank you.
Thank you. Today's initial presentation grew out of a desire to find out how much time relatively do the police spend on different types of calls. But we're going to start off hearing about the BOEC process, and then the bureaus wanted to spend some time on the call type restructuring project, which seemed a natural outgrowth of talking about BOEC. So the discussion of how much time relatively do the police spend on different types of calls doesn't start until slide 20. So I'm a little worried we might wind up spending all of our time talking about the first 19 slides and not get to what I think is the meat of it. So I'm going to ask my colleagues to try to limit your questions on the first couple of sessions so we have enough time for the third. And then, of course, you can always ask questions about the first two parts at the end. You may proceed.
Okay, thank you, Chair, Co-Chair, and Council members for having us here today.
Sorry, I forgot to ask Keelan to call the first item.
I'll wait.
Thank you. Item 1, Portland Police Bureau allocation of personnel time and budgetary impacts.
Now you may proceed.
Okay. Well, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Co-Chair and Council members for having us here today. For the record, my name is Mike Myers. I'm the Deputy City Administrator for the Public Safety Service Area. As Chairs Novick said, our Business Services Unit has sought input from Co-Chairs Novick and Canal, and we put together a presentation that we believe helps set some context on how calls for service come in and how the Bureau of Emergency Communications and police respond to those calls. Today, we'll be presenting on how emergency response is allocated across various call types, with specific focus on call types of high interest, such as welfare checks, unwanted person, or disturbance calls. BOEC will discuss how dispatchers field emergency calls to send out the best suited agency for the situation, right responder, right call. And the Portland Police Bureau will also present on how much of the Bureau's time is spent directed to high volume call types and share other high priority duties. I'll now hand this off to Director Bob Causey, the Director of the Bureau of Emergency Communications. Director Causey, thank you for being here.
Thank you, and good afternoon, co-chairs and members of the committee. I'm Bob Causey, Director of the Bureau of Emergency Communications. Forgive me, I'm losing my voice. I was sick last week and am definitely recovering. You just can't hear me, so I'll do my best to speak as loudly as possible. Today, I will be providing a high-level overview of BOEC call processing, and Deputy Director Steve Maudsley, seated next to me, will provide some detailed information on 4 different call types: disturbance, suspicious, unwanted, and welfare checks. And he's using recent call data from calls that were handled just this month. Next slide, please.
Point, is it? It's like it's not good.
Okay. We're waiting for the call processing slide to show up, but as soon as it does, what you're going to see is really how calls flow into BOEC and through BOEC. 911 calls Well, you're all aware that BOEC processes calls from 911 lines as well as non-emergency and administrative lines. And the picture that you're going to see in just a minute will demonstrate that. 911 calls are answered directly by a BOEC call taker who processes the information for dispatch. The dispatcher then sends appropriate help, either fire and EMS, Portland Street Response, or police. Non-emergency calls are processed through our non-emergency triage system, and depending on the need, callers are provided information directly, they're transferred to 311, or they're transferred to a BOEC call taker to set up a call for service. It's the same call taker answering 911 calls at BOEC who also answers non-emergency calls. Now, I'll hand it off to Deputy Director Steve Maudsley to go into more detail.
Yes, good afternoon. As the Director mentioned, I'm Steve Maudsley, Deputy Director of BOEC. And as we're waiting for the slides to load on the screen, I will first talk about an overview of BOEC call processing. There will be a slide for that in a moment. BOEC receives requests for service a number of different ways. Primarily through phone, and we also receive text to 911, both through for emergency and non-emergency requests for service. Once connected to a call taker, a community member can expect to be run through questioning for the call taker obtaining the address, a summary of what happened, and the caller's relationship to the incident they're calling to report. They'll also gather additional information about time frame, and determine whether an incident meets criteria for dispatching by BOEC, or if that incident would meet criteria for a referral or transfer to another agency in the city or county. If it does not meet criteria for dispatching, they'll determine the appropriate location and move that transfer or referral out of BOEC's phone system to get that person connected to the right service point. If it is dispatchable by BOEC, the incident nature of the reason they're calling will result in a call type and priority being assigned that will either be an immediate dispatch by radio or a non-emergent self-dispatch. And that's one, in the case of law enforcement calls, where an officer will dispatch themselves from their mobile computer in their patrol car. I want to mention that as calls evolve through the call taking process, as information changes either through call taking or in the response process, incident details such as time frame or hazards or certain people who become involved or leave the scene, for example, may change a dispatched response.
I want to ask, do we think that we should be able to get the slides up soon, or should we try to figure out how to proceed without slides?
Yes. So sorry, we're just getting the link shared so that we can join. We didn't get the link originally. Sorry about that. Thank you.
I can continue forward and
yes, Mr. Maudsley. And if it's we up here do have paper copies. If you want to start going through the slides when we don't have it up, please do.
Great. Okay. Disturbance is the first call type that we're going to jump into. Next slide, please, when you get to it. So diving deeper into those call examples, disturbance call came to us on 911. It was actually a community member that called 911 and hung up after doing so. So on callback, our call taker obtained the address and really a nature of the call in asking what happened. And they learned that two parties on scene exchanged heated words with each other. One pointed finger guns at and then chased the caller's child. That subject who did that then left in a vehicle. The caller was able to provide the call taker with a description, including license plate and time frame, and note that two people were on scene, both the caller and a witness, awaiting officer contact. A disturbance call type was assigned, and since the subject was gone, it was a non-emergent call for self-dispatch. Now, if the subject was still on scene or there was a co-response with another responder that both dispatches, it would have been an immediate dispatch for all responders by radio. Next slide, please. This, back one, please, for suspicious. Thank you. Suspicious call type. This one came to us also on 911, and it's where the neighborhood was reporting someone seen along the side of their neighbor's house. And they had actually reached out to the owner of that house to confirm that the house should be unoccupied at that time. Our call taker proceeded with questioning and learned a clothing description for the subject. The reporting party noted they were carrying a bag and really acting very suspiciously along the side of this, presumably vacant house at the time, unoccupied house. And police were responding clearly to contact the subject, the caller, a neighbor in person, and then the homeowner by phone as follow-up. So a suspicious person and circumstance call type was assigned. It was an in-progress emergency, so it was an immediate dispatch by radio. Now, the caller later advised that the subject was a friend and they were okay to be on the property. During the course of that 911 call, the caller described to the call taker that they saw the subject attempt entry through trying a door or a window or something like that. Suspicious would not be the call type used. It would be a burglary or attempted burglary instead. Still an immediate dispatch by radio and still an emergency. Next slide, please. A third example of a call type we wanted to provide some details for you came in from a security monitoring company on our 10-digit emergency line. So this line acts very much like 911. It's just for companies, for people outside of the immediate geographical area where 911 phone calls will land. And so the company was watching video, third-party video of 4 subjects loitering on steps to a restaurant where they provide security monitoring. And they noted it had occurred before, but they couldn't really tell for great descriptions of these subjects. So police were en route to check the subjects and contact the monitoring company by phone for follow-up. Unwanted person was the call type we assigned. While it was in progress, it's not an emergency at that point, and so the non-emergent self-dispatch priority was assigned. So an officer responded and moved those subjects along. The subjects later returned, resulting in the monitoring company calling us back again, calling BOEC and requesting an additional dispatch of PPB with the incident being reopened. Next slide, please. And this welfare check came into us on 911 as well. It was a motorist reporting someone walking along the freeway in a really dangerous spot, right on the fog line. And they were able to provide us a full description of the subject and a good location that we were able to combine information with talking to Oregon State Police and ODOT, along with other 911 callers reporting someone walking along the freeway. And we used the welfare check call type. It was an in-progress incident, and as you'll see in just a minute, we'll provide a couple other examples of different types of welfare checks. And it's one of these call types that can be used across a number of incident types. With a high concern of hazardous condition, both to the person walking along the freeway and to other motorists passing by, immediate dispatch by radio was coordinated. The officer responded, PPB located the subject, and helped them order a tow for their stalled vehicle that was nearby. Next slide, please. As mentioned a minute ago, additional welfare check incidents that met criteria for dispatching a PPB response. These are all incidents. These 7 total incidents are ones that BOEC processed and PPB responded to in the last month. First one was a passerby reporting someone not wearing appropriate safety gear or reflective clothing who was climbing the St. John's Bridge. Another caller reported a neighbor had not been seen in 3 days. They were really concerned about their welfare. And a third 911 call, a caller received a text message from a friend, and that friend had asked them to call 911 for help, and then the friend stopped messaging. So not knowing what the outcome, in the moment not knowing the outcome of those or having additional contact info, PPB was dispatched as those incidents met criteria for a welfare check. And I know you'll hear more about our call type restructuring project in a moment, but I'll turn it back to Director Causey.
As you can see, these are 4 examples, plus a few additional ones for welfare check. There's a lot of nuance in calls, virtually every call that we take at BOEC. I'd like to, as a result of that, next slide please, recognize that all of you really don't have the level of experience that we have. And I want to invite each of you to come into BOEC, formally invite you all to come in for a sit-along. I think that would be really eye-opening, very educational, and help you kind of put the pieces together. I know that, you know, as a whole, City Council is really expected to make some serious decisions and some tough choices this year. And in order to do that, I think it's paramount that you have as much information, as much education as possible. So I'm more than happy to facilitate that. Feel free to reach out and we can get you scheduled for a sit-along. 1 hour, 2 hours, whatever works for your schedule. Also, I do want to mention that mid-April is National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. That's coming up, and we welcome each of you to stop by and recognize our staff during that recognition week. So thank you, and at this point, I'd like to hand it off to Nick McDonald to discuss the call type restructuring project.
Thank you. Can we have the next slide? My name is Nick McDonald. I'm a performance analyst with the Public Safety Service Area. I'm leading the project to restructure the call type restructuring project. We began in June 2024. The goal of the project is to make sure we send the right responder to the right call, identify situations where we may not need to respond at all, recommend changes to the prioritization of calls we should make, propose call types that we should retire, combine, or split into several new types, and ensure Bureau policies and procedures receive appropriate updates. Can we have the next slide? There are 125 call types right now. You can see those here. Some of these over the years have become redundant. Some of them need updating. We can get the next slide. The bureaus and agencies that use these call types are more than you might think. There are a range of our own city agencies, people involved, other people who use the 911 system, labor relations, labor unions. There are legal implications when we make changes to the call types. So the group that is meeting around this is led by BOEC and PPB, but it includes a large range of stakeholders who are going to need to have input and be consulted and ultimately agree to any changes as we recommend them. Can we get the next slide? Here's the Gantt chart for the project. Began in July 2024. We hope to make preliminary recommendations to the bureau leads in May this year with a view to get this project wrapped up by March of next year if all goes well. Can we get the next slide? So the next steps we're developing, we're meeting currently with the various stakeholders with a view to developing a decision-making framework and a series of recommendations that will go to the public safety chiefs and directors, partner organization leadership, and ultimately the DCA and council for approval. We need to then meet with the city attorney's office, with BHR and with labor relations and with the various labor representation groups to get those ironed out, and then create an implementation plan with performance metrics, dispatch protocols, new call types, dispatch criteria, prioritization levels, and then we need to educate the public about any changes that we make. Can we get the next slide? I don't want to preempt the findings of this group, but just for information, there are a couple of things that have come up as being potentially interesting. The death call type, for instance, currently the police attend all medically unattended deaths and wait at the scene for the medical examiner. We need to work with the medical examiner's office, but there's potential that we would not need to attend all of these. Burglar alarms, there are circumstances with unregistered burglar alarms or repeated false alarms where we may either not want to attend or we may need to issue more fines. Welfare check and unwanted person, we're exploring whether some of these calls could be reallocated to PSR or medical if there's no threat of violence or crime. We're working currently with BOEC and with PPB to understand more about the nature of these calls and why they were routed currently to PPB. There are certain elements of these that need to be routed to PPB, but some that we suspect might be possible to reroute. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. Just curious, why would you think that a death call wouldn't require a police officer? You wouldn't know if it was a homicide and you would leave that to PSR?
No, I'm not suggesting they would go to PSR. Currently, any medically unattended death is attended by the Police Bureau. There are situations where there's no belief that a crime has been committed, and we're exploring whether or not it would be necessary for the police to remain at the scene until the medical examiner can get there. There's a possibility that either nobody would be required to wait, or that a medical unit is a better response to do that.
Okay, thank you.
See no more questions in the queue, so maybe, let's see. Does this panel have more to say, or I'm getting confused? Should we move on to the next panel?
That sums it up for this half.
Okay.
And we actually took less time than originally scheduled. So
you did indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, chairs, councilors. I'm Bob Day. I'm Chief of Police for the Police Bureau. Appreciate being here. It's a beautiful day outside, but I'm going to defer here quickly to Deputy Chief Jovic and Lauren Brown from our Strategic Services Division. I want to thank the council for this opportunity. I want to thank the council for their questions and their thoughtfulness, as well as the engagement of Councilor Novick, Councilor Knoll, particularly in the last week, being available to be on calls. Hopefully, this meets some of your expectations. I'm confident there'll be questions at the end as we work through this. But I also want to recognize DC Jovic, Lauren Brown, and our comms team and others who've spent many hours on this project last couple of weeks trying to provide you with information that's helpful in your decision making. So with that, I'll turn it over to them. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Good afternoon, everyone. Deputy Chief Chris Jovic. I'm going to walk you through some call types today and some of the calls in general that the Police Bureau is responding to. And there's a few critical things that we want to make you aware of, but, kind of as a level set when we go into these stats. They're posted up here on the PowerPoint, and I won't read them all, but I just want to highlight that this data involves all calls that our staff goes to. That's patrol staff and all sworn staff, including our public safety support specialists. And we're talking about call types. It's very important to remember the call type that is originally dispatched is not necessarily the criminal outcome or the investigation that occurs once officers get on scene. Oftentimes officers arrive on scene and find something completely different than the call that was initiated. Next slide. So with that understanding, let's go ahead and dive in here. As you can see, dispatch calls, or calls that actually come from BOIC, take up about 74% of our time. Actually, I take that back, 77% of our time. We're reading that. Call volume? Yeah, sorry, 77% of the time. And our self-initiated calls take up considerably less. It's important to point out that over half of our self-initiated calls are actually not by staff assigned to patrol duties. Those are people that are assigned to special units such as the traffic division, our bike squad, or working mission-based initiatives. The third category down there with a very low call volume is directed patrol. This used to be actually used quite a bit more when we were more staffed. This is actually timing the dispatch of a specific unit to a specific location to intercede in something that we have information that a crime is typically occurring in a specific location or a specific time in the day. So that is not used all that often anymore. Next slide. All right, the next slide, actually two slides, are our time on calls by priority level. These are the top 20, and I'll go through a few of these here. I'm not going to read each one of them, but it's interesting to note our priority levels obviously help determine our dispatch order and response levels. But our high priority calls, the ones that we consider high priority, are 1s through 3s, make up about a third of our call volume, but we actually spend about 45% of our on-call time on those calls themselves. Conversely, we actually spend only 25% of our time on those higher priority self-initiated calls. Next slide. So these next two slides are actually the top 20 calls that we utilize our patrol time on, and actually some non-patrol time on, I should say. And as you've heard from our partners at BOIC, call types are assigned priority levels based on dispatch protocol, and that's agreed on by BOIC and all of those members that were listed in that slide that are being consulted for the call type restructuring. There's over 160 call types in our database, and the following graphic provides the information on the 20 that we spend the most time on, which account for 70% of our total time on calls. And I'll go ahead and walk you through a few of those now. As you can see, we spend the most time on those disturbance priority calls. They're mostly dispatched, and we use we use mostly patrol officer time on those calls. They're usually assigned a priority 2, and these calls include a threat to the public peace or safety and don't fit in a more specific call type. If there is more information that the caller gives, they could be refined down into a more specific call type. Detail call. So details are used for missions and generally involve coordinating multiple resources. So if we have a bunch of officers on our roster and we want to pull them to work one of our SVO missions or retail theft missions, we put them on a call so they can't be dispatched by BOIC. So therefore, they're sitting on that call until they take a proactive step like make a traffic stop or something like that, so they don't show available for service. That's why the number is so high. Traffic.
But would that include like the street racing detail?
Absolutely. Traffic stops are nearly all self-initiated. There is a 0.01 that is not, and those are typically DUI info calls that turn into traffic stops, so they're actually changed because they're dispatched by BOIC. Slightly more than half of the time spent on these are non-patrol units. Again, these are special units, traffic division, etc. So we don't have data on how much total time is spent between moving violations and non-moving violations, but we know through our stops data that 68.4% of the time traffic stops are from moving violations. Number 4, suspicious calls, as you heard about, are related to reports of suspicious persons, vehicles, or circumstances. These calls vary in priority, but are typically number 4, and they use mostly patrol time. Unwanted persons are subjects refusing to leave from inside or outside a location when asked. These calls are mostly dispatch calls and mostly use patrol time as well. Number 6, follow-up. Follow-up is a very broad category. About half of it's self-initiated, and a large portion of using that call type is non-patrol officers. It's used by a lot of our investigative units. Follow-up is used by any member that's out in the community conducting further investigation on a case of theirs. Or it can be set up as a call dispatched by BOIC if a community member has information or evidence to turn over to a patrol officer. 8 and 9 are welfare checks of different varieties. Welfare checks are calls requesting to check on the health and safety of a community member. Cold welfare checks are typically priority 4, while priority welfare checks are usually a priority 2. They mostly use patrol time as well in our dispatch calls. Next slide, please. All right, I'm going to cover number 11 and number 20 because they can be confusing at times. So shooting with a weapon, number 11, is when an assault with a firearm has occurred or believed to have occurred, not just shots heard in a general area. Shots fired is when shots are fired or heard in an area with no indication of a victim and don't always end up as confirmed shooting scenes, right? Many times these shots calls are the result of off-season fireworks, vehicles backfiring, but they can also result in bona fide shooting scenes that we arrive to before a victim or a witness is called in. Number 12 is assist. Again, another pretty broad category. Assist calls involve PPB assisting another agency. It could be fire, Could be another law enforcement agency like Gresham, Tigard, Beaverton that come into our jurisdiction looking for a witness, suspect, something like that. They could also be set up to assist a community member, for instance, a person that has a car breakdown in a dangerous spot and they need assistance with traffic control so they can get their tow and get moved out of the way. Number 13, 14, and 16, those are all very low priority calls, and a lot of those are taken by our public safety support specialists. Next slide. All right, so far we've talked about responding to calls and some of our self-initiated calls, but we also wanted to give you a brief illustration of all the other duties our personnel have to do in the course of their day. We frequently hear from our folks that we take on ride-alongs how amazed they are by how much paperwork, frankly, we have to do. We fill out our general offense reports, which are our typical crime reports, custody reports, supplemental reports, property forms, and much more. There's also a significant amount of administrative work that happens during the days, including roll call, downloading body-worn cameras, uploading evidence, as well as court appearances. There's follow-up reports on previous days' cases and often follow-up phone calls with victims and witnesses. Yet if you have an additional role, such as a coach or another detached job, there's also additional work that you have to do, such as if you're a coach, you have to fill out a daily observation report for your training, which is labor intensive. Next slide. And we also have proactive work that may take the form of addressing community livability or traffic concerns. And not all of our training is done off-site. A lot of our training we have to do with inside our 10-hour shift. We have our learning management system where officers are required to watch videos and take tests when directives or laws are updated. And again, if you have additional responsibility, there's even more training to keep up on that end. As far as our people that are not in patrol response, it's difficult to encompass all of the work they do, specifically detectives, except to discuss the massive amounts of investigative follow-up, including interviewing complainants, witnesses, suspects, reviewing evidence, both physical and digital, as well as writing reports and affidavits and carving out time to appear in court as well. And all of our members, just like other city employees, are entitled to vacation and sick time, or in some cases, are away from work due to on-the-job injuries or protected leave. All of these have significant effects on our precinct operations that are not fully staffed because they force us to hire people on overtime to backfill those vacancies. And last but not least is our community engagement, and I want to turn it over to Chief Dave for that.
Yeah, so next slide, please. Police Bureau historically has not done a great job of tracking its community engagement. A while back, we developed an app, and we're increasing the use of that app, which demonstrates there in November and December of last year a significant increase. Was part of my direction that we were going to do a better job of capturing what we were doing. Also, if you look at November and December, we made a heavy emphasis on the walking beats in that time period. We're tracking this now. We're putting out a report every 2 weeks to all of our precincts and everybody to see who's keeping track of what. Community engagement's pretty broad, but it's essentially, when they either are at a community meeting or an event, or pretty well open to their discretion, but it allows for us to be able to capture what the officers are doing in a non-enforcement way. And this is important to me, as I've stated before, my primary goal of transforming the dynamic between the police and the people we serve. I think it happens when we are not in critical incidents, when we are not in times of crisis. It's difficult to establish rapport and relationships in times of chaos. Doesn't mean that our responsibility is any less when we're on scene. We absolutely have to make sure that we are equally as professional, and there can be some connectivity that happens, whether it be on a traffic stop or on a call. But these are incidents that are occurring outside of that, and we're really impressed, and I'm impressed and encouraged at the level of engagement we're seeing, as well as the accounting for it within the app. So the numbers in 2025 I anticipate are going to be much higher, because we are doing more of this intentional work, but also because we're doing a better job recording it. Next slide. These are a variety of examples of what referred to as community engagement, and they kind of run the gamut of just trying to demonstrate where we're at and who we're meeting with or who we're talking to. The app allows us to put, how many officers are on scene, how many community members are on scene, if it has a specific name or for the event. Is there any social media associated with it? Can we post pictures and send it to our comms team, et cetera? I use the app extensively when I'm out and about and just to be able to record where we're at. Next slide, please. I already mentioned some of the things why it matters, but one of the things that's really important is if our officers are continually going from crisis to crisis or call to call and never see an opportunity to engage in other manners with people that are not crisis oriented, that begins to wear on their own wellness and their own well-being. They're not robots, they're employees, they're human beings, and they have, basic desire to have that connection with community. I really believe that as we talk about trying to encourage trust and trust building and relationship building, it comes in seeing one another and understanding one another and challenging them regularly, as well as myself, to be out and about in conversations, in spaces, whether we're in agreement or not, to be able to hear those voices and maybe develop some learning and some curiosity about one another that we didn't have before. I think that plays into so many aspects of the core role of policing in any community is that trust in relationship. Next slide, please. A quick example of this, where I was extremely proud of the team, was the shooting we had last fall in Southwest. It's in the parking lot of a school, a Muslim school, also next to a mosque. And when the call came out, there was a tremendous amount of concern. One of the suspects ran into the school. There was thoughts of this being a bias crime. There was thoughts of this possibly being an active shooter. A lot of misunderstanding. We have a longstanding history with the Muslim community. We have a Muslim Advisory Council. The vast majority of imams in the Tri-County area are participants in that. We have deep relationships in the Muslim community and their leadership because of this advisory council. And so quickly, officers on scene were able to determine this was not an active shooter. It was not a terrorist attack. There was not further risk. We identified the suspect. This was actually a disagreement, unfortunately, between two parents in the parking lot. And by just making a series of phone calls, we were able to share that information quickly with the Muslim leaders in the community. They were able to put information out. And this has led to a relationship with the Islamic school that we never had before, to the point now where we have gone back to the Islamic school and provided ongoing training on active shooter response and opened up tremendous doors of communication with them. We've also had experiences, once again referring to the Muslim community, where we've been on scene and had language barriers, maybe with some of our East African immigrants and so forth. We've been able to call upon folks or have them be on scene and be able to interpret or at least explain to community why it is and what it is that we're doing. And just recently, 2 weeks ago, I was in Anaheim, where we actually were able to present, along with one of our Muslim Advisory Council members, highly unusual, bring a community member with us to present at the International Association of Chiefs of Police Wellness Conference. And our emphasis was on social wellness. There's a heavy emphasis on wellness in policing today, and that is about getting proper sleep, proper diet, exercise, all those things that are very practical and very much real. We were the only class that I was aware of down there that emphasized the significance of social wellness. And we used the model of breaking bread with the iftar dinner as another example with our Muslim brothers and sisters that we celebrated a few weeks ago in Southwest. And this is just one example. We have several others, but at the end of the day, I think it's important that we not only see the benefit in the personal relationship, but there's also a benefit when it comes to crime reduction, reducing the fear of crime, and this is better for our members. It allows them to have these relationships in a way and be encouraged, and I think that directly contributes to their wellness. I think we're getting close here. That's it. Getting close to the end. Yeah, that's the final slide. So we obviously have created some space and time for conversation and questions.
Councilor Maria.
Thanks for being here today. I appreciated learning about PBB's advisory teams and how they help you navigate different complicated situations. I was curious about how those advisory teams are established, what sorts of recruitment happen, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm going to speak to what I have learned because they have changed in the time that I was gone. But currently, other than the Train Advisory Council and the Behavioral Health Unit, those two councils report to the city. They are part of the city process. The 7 or 8 advisory councils, Latino, Muslim, African American, Slavic, et cetera, Asian Pacific Islander, those are independent councils. So when they meet, they run the meeting. We don't run the meeting. We don't do the recruitment. We don't facilitate. It's a community-led event. So in terms of the recruitment process, I really don't know. I haven't asked that specific question. I think it's a great question to ask. This is a program that I inherited upon my return, and so far it seems to be working well, but I'm certainly willing to connect you with the various chairs of those different committees, and you can ask. But what I appreciated about it is they really are community-led. They set the agenda. For example, last night there was a meeting. Once a month there's a meeting with all of the chairs of all the councils. It's called the CAG, Community Advisory Group. And they meet once a month, and they had some questions. I answered some emails. I said, hey, I'm happy to jump on last night at 5:30 and participate. And the response was, no, we're good. We don't need you. We've got the answers, and we're going to manage the meeting ourselves. And they had a police officer there for something else, and Natasha Huntsberger, who's a liaison with them. But it's unusual for a community group to say, hey, no, we don't need the chief. We're good. But that's because they have their own agenda and their own program, and I'm there to support. But I can ask about recruitment, Counselor.
Thank you. I'm going to start with my sort of questions that are not related to community engagement, just because kind of about half and half there. On slide 20, it talks about the majority spent on self-initiated calls was by sworn personnel not assigned to patrol, such as traffic, bike squad investigations, et cetera. I think you explained pretty well how investigations are self-initiated, and I think as well as traffic stops. Could you speak to the self-initiated calls of the bike squad? Just give a little bit of information there for us, please.
Yeah, a lot of it's proactive activity in the downtown core area, whether they're addressing drug hotspots or livability issues. You name it. I mean, their job is to be out, be visible, and contact people that are violating the law. So would I be correct then in saying that the self-initiated calls of the bike squad are when there is a suspicion of crime being committed? Could be, or, I mean, they ride around and talk to a lot of community members. They also talk to business owners. There's a lot to do in the downtown core.
Okay, thanks. Let's see. Yeah, that's weird. When you get to the beyond call load section under proactive work, it's slide 25. There's a whole section there, or subsection on patrols, and I'm not 100% sure what's captured in that category that isn't captured in sort of walking beats and some of the other things that are also mentioned under community engagement. Can you clarify what proactive work patrols means in that slide?
Sure. Visibility is important for a lot of people, and we go into neighborhoods, and people that have crime issues or livability issues, and we literally drive around and make our presence known. A lot of times we don't need to enforce a specific law or pull people over. Just that mere presence actually cools the temperature, or it stops the behavior that people are concerned about.
Yeah, proactive behavior is certainly consistent. Not to be confused with community engagement, but it's not uncommon. Community engagement we tend to categorize as an event. So we go to a community meeting, we just label that as community engagement. But it's, under proactive, it could be we're getting concerns or we have observations or awareness around, X. And so we get out and walk around 2 or 3 square blocks, and that could be seen as proactive and maybe not record as community engagement. You know, because we are in the process of doing a better job of documenting this, I just recently had a back and forth email exchange with a sergeant in North Precinct who's intentionally getting officers out to walk neighborhoods and communities and business areas that haven't seen a lot of police engagement. And it's really just getting out and walking around. But we have to do a better job of making sure, are we calling that under proactive, like a call for service, or are we labeling that as community engagement? So those are some of the learning processes I think that come out of this. But historically, we look at proactive, as DC Jovic said, getting out, addressing a problem per se. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I have a follow-up on that to the first part of that DC Jovic said. What helps you decide when it's appropriate to do that? I've been getting a lot of constituent requests about open-air drug use near a school in the Stadium Hood, for example. And I'm curious why there hasn't been a proactive patrol on that relative to some other things that maybe don't have the same level or the same level of allegation, if not necessarily interest.
Yeah, I don't know if it's correct to say that there hasn't been a patrol. You know, there might not have been a patrol that the complainant saw or that we all know about, right? There is problems, unfortunately, citywide, right? So we can't focus just on one constituent's issue. We really need to move around and make the most of our time taking care of everybody's needs. And sometimes all those needs aren't taken care of just in one shift, right? So yes, we would love to be seen, like I was talking about visibility, for people that know that we're out in the area doing that work. But a lot of times that doesn't coincide with them being present.
And I just want to affirm, too, your question about, how does that decision get made, right? It's very nuanced, not unlike you heard from Director Causey. And I want to recognize him and Steve for their work in conjunction with us on this project in general. They've been great partners, and I really appreciate his leadership up there. But it's very nuanced, and there isn't a script that says, this is where we're going to be this proactive, this is where we're not, this is how we're going to respond to this concern. And it's oftentimes can be challenging based upon the prioritizing what that concern is and maybe who is that area affecting. Sometimes we're criticized because we're alleged to have showed favoritism to a particular area of concern. One of the things that I hear as I travel around the city, there's frustration sometimes on the emphasis we place on downtown. We place a heavy emphasis on downtown. And last year, I increased our bike squad on afternoons. I took 4 officers from somewhere else and put an afternoon bike squad downtown. So we have a day shift and an afternoon bike squad. And I know there's other parts of the city that would really appreciate having that afternoon bike squad. And I made that decision because of the fentanyl crisis, the overdose, all of the things that we see. So I'm constantly challenged on our leadership to be evaluating all of those basic concerns and trying to make sure that we're being as equitable as possible. But I affirm DC Jovic's comments. You'd be really not probably surprised, but I am continually challenged by the amount of requests that come in for us to check on this area or check on that area that don't come through the 911 system, but come through either your constituents or, et cetera.
Yeah, thanks. And then my last clarification, I'll pass it on to my colleagues, is why are warrants considered so heavily self-initiated? This is slide 23, I want to say. Yeah, category 18.
Yeah, so those would be search warrants or arrest warrants that investigators initiate. So those aren't things that BOIC dispatches to us. Those are cases that we build up from their infancy and bring them to fruition after writing affidavits and serving warrants.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Zimmerman.
Thanks. With respect to the neighborhood response teams, I'm trying to understand where their type of activity is captured in this, in these different tables. Obviously, Bike Squad is part of NRT, but it's even more than that across all precincts. Can you help me out with that a bit?
Yeah, much of it is self-initiated. There was a good question about the camping code and how low it is. So the camping code is used specifically by our neighborhood response teams in conjunction with our
I know, Portland Solutions.
Portland Solutions, thank you very much. They have weekly meetings that discuss camps that need to be addressed. When they arrive on a location that needs to be addressed, they set up that call type and then respond to it.
But they do a lot more than just camps. I need to make sure we're real clear about that.
Absolutely. I mean, they are really the jacks of all trade. They're the ones that take your constituents' complaints and have, they used to have a lot more free time, but have the time to actually address those and are not tied to taking radio calls.
One of the projects we started a year ago is each precinct has a NERT team, but once a month they all get together, so we combine all 3 teams and address a specific area in each precinct. So it's an attempt to try and maximize, but also means that you could see maybe an inconsistency in reporting, right? Because you're going to have 5 and 5 and 5, but then when you have 15 come to each precinct in March, you might see a spike in that self-initiated, self-reported stuff, and then all of a sudden you see a spike in April in Central Precinct. It's because you've got more officers engaged in a specific area. That's just a possibility, but they do a ton more and have been just an amazing resource. Seen them develop over the years.
So as I look at this dispatch, self-initiated, and directed categories, I'm kind of landing on, and I'm looking to you for if this is the right place to land. I'm landing on I would feel like we were moving in the right direction if our self-initiated calls were a larger percentage, because in my mind, I'm coming from this, it means that the presence patrol is more frequent. The bike squad is more likely to be able to tackle the challenges that are happening in whatever area. So self-initiated would be a good thing if we saw that rising. Is that a safe way to kind of view as the numbers go over the course of this next year, 2-3 years, that would be a good thing?
Yes, absolutely. Back when we were fully staffed, we didn't just strive to have minimums, right? The minimum amount of people that we could get by with. We actually had extra people. So those missions that we're now spending overtime on, those were done on a daily basis, right? On straight time. So there's a significant cost savings there when we have people above the minimums, and we can be proactive with just our regular shift personnel.
Okay, thanks. I have really valued, in my district in particular, the West Side, the presence. And I think it is an important factor. And when Councillor Canal brings a budget amendment to put bike squads in all the precincts, I will second it with loud applause. Because I think those presence have made a big difference for a lot of folks who are at times concerned that they don't see the day-to-day stuff being dealt with. I shouldn't have to call 911 on this thing that is so obvious. Why is somebody driving past it? Well, they're driving past it because they're going to an even more important thing that bike squads and NRTs, I think, really have helped us tackle. So I appreciate you keeping them out there. That's been important. And it's part of why I think the PS3 branding should reflect more of what the public safety apparatus of the city looks like, because I think it also helps us send a message. So all those types of things help in terms of how our calls come in as well. So thanks a lot, gentlemen.
And just one comment, Councilor, on self-initiated, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I know that it's not always resulting in an arrest, right? So I would love to see us be at a place where just the presence of law enforcement discourages criminal behavior. And that is the motivation behind the walking beats the last couple of years, was when we would maximize everybody from my office on down being present and being out, not making arrests, just engaging, but being present. And when we did that, although a very, very, very small sample size, we saw a decrease in calls for service, a decrease in reported crimes, and literally 0 arrests. So I think it's possible to create an environment where you have law enforcement and you have community and you have less crime. And that doesn't have to be because of enforcement, my point.
Councilor Maria.
I already asked a question. Do you want to go first according to our order?
No, I'll take the privilege of the chair and delay myself.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I appreciate your graciousness. I had a kind of specific question about some incidents that have come up in the community that I'm curious about how they would be categorized. And it's okay if you don't know this off the top of your head, there might be a follow-up situation. I'm sure you've heard about the Community Free Store PDX and some of the incidents that have happened there. For folks who are watching from home, the Community Free Store is a group of mutual aid activists that are handing out food, clothing, hygiene kits, and they do this, and full disclosure, they were doing this on a private empty lot that was owned by somebody else. So that is obviously a crime. But it is my understanding, and I actually personally witnessed and went there in person and saw that there were 10 to 11 police vehicles on site, not once but twice, and about 20 officers dispatched there. And that, considering that it wasn't, a violent situation, people were handing out free items, maybe in a space that they shouldn't have been allowed to be. I'm just curious about, one, if that was a 911 call that was requested and then dispatch decided to send 10 cop cars there with 20 officers, or if that was a private request from an individual citizen to have police show up there with that level of force. I'm just curious because it seemed like a really heavy use of police resources in the evening, which is a really critical time, I think, for you guys to be patrolling for something that was relatively benign. And I'm just curious if you can speak a bit to how that call type would be, addressed here, if that goes through 911, if that goes through some community member asking individually, et cetera.
I don't know the answers to how that call was initiated or what call type it is. I am happy to send you a copy of that call. That's all public record, so we can certainly do that.
We did have Commander Hughes looking into that, so I know that he's got much more detailed information on it. And I would encourage you to reach out, and I can have him connect with you. But I know that Commander Hughes has been really engaged in that conversation, both that incident as well. I would say a couple of things, and I think DC Jovic touched on it earlier. One is we don't always know the whole story in terms of what's not, say we, I'm talking collectively, I'm not talking about the police for a minute, I'm talking collectively. So it's not uncommon to show up and see 10 police cars and everything's static and think, what do we have 10 police cars? And frankly, that is a thing of mine when I show up and I see officers just standing around unnecessarily and we have a lot of work to be done. I'm the first to kind of say, hey, what are we doing here? Where can we move? But the circumstances about how that call arrives, and I'm going to ask Steve or Bob to check me, but they don't make the determination to say send 5 cars or send 10 cars. If it's a high priority call, you're going to send 2, right? Thank you. They're going to send 2, and then we can make the discussion or the determination about how we want to add that up. So that call may have came out categorized as X, disturbance, whatever, I don't know. Once again, we can get that. A couple officers show up on scene, then they evaluate and call for more officers. And, then they are responsible to be able to articulate what were the circumstances that required them to call for more officers. And it is my expectation that when we have that presence, that it's legitimate, that we have reasons to be there, and that we're only there for the amount of time necessary. But cops are people too. They stand around, they see somebody they haven't seen in a while, they get to visiting and lose track of time. That's just reality. I think this speaks to, I know this isn't part of the question, but I think it speaks to the number of officers who were at Councilor Canal's public meeting. We had 5 officers show up. That wasn't my direction. That wasn't my expectation. I wanted a couple officers to come by so they could hear from you and hear from the community. But also then other officers heard and said, oh, well, they're going to check this out. I'm going to go with them, kind of a deal. And one of the things that I'm learning in this process is to be more deliberate, to be more intentional about the direction that we give and the expectation we set. So the sergeants and the officers on scene certainly have that discretion. I'm always going to defer to them, but then afterwards be able to have the conversation, which, like I said, Commander Hughes has had, and I would encourage us to follow up with him. I can get you whatever you need the details of.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think, for our town halls, because I think that happened to, well, I don't think it did happen to me as well, with 2 officers that showed up. Hughes has always been lovely to me when I was campaigning. He came up to me at an event, shook my hand, was very friendly, made sure that I felt comfortable. That's not really what happened with the officers that showed up at my town hall. And so I think that there's a different feeling, and I'm very aware of what's happening. It's not, maybe there's an intention impact aspect to it, but I'm also not stupid, and I see what's happening with my own eyes, and I trust the evidence of my own eyes because I know the difference when someone is doing community policing. I also still think that I have seen the community free store operate, and there are a lot of people getting services there that frankly our government should probably be providing, and we're not, and that's why the community is having to show up together to give out free resources like COVID kits, clothes, etc. And I understand the aspect of private property, right, and them being on an empty lot and that being an issue. But when 10 to 11 police cars are there with 20 officers, that is incredibly heavy-handed. If there's nothing violent going on, if there's nothing serious, I would expect that it would be much lower. So if there is a 911 call and I'm looking to BOEC, I want to see that 911 call. If this was a call made from a resident in Old Town that privately contacted officers to show up, I would like to see that as well, because it's also my understanding that members of the district attorney's staff showed up who are unrelated to this sort of patrol. And so it seems like it was kind of coordinated outside of the normal bounds of how these calls should be dispatched. And I think that that's very serious given our limited resources. So I would just love to see more evidence about how that all came forward.
Thank you, Counselor. We're more than happy to do all the research necessary. If you could reach out to me directly with details of that call for service, we'll do the research. And we always do a quality check anyway when we receive these types of requests. So we'll make sure we do that.
Thank you. I'll follow up with you. Appreciate your time.
Chief Day, I'm going to ask you a question which your staff and I have previously agreed is unfair. But I think that it's important to get an answer, and I think it's one of these situations where your off-the-cuff answer is probably at least as good as an answer that you'd give if you had a lot of time to think about it. So here's the question. I asked your folks how many FTE do welfare check calls represent? And I was thinking, if there were no welfare calls, check calls, how many FTE would that free up? And Lauren said, well, if you add up the amount of time spent on welfare check calls and divide that by 2,080, assuming that's sort of like a normal year of work, then you get about 11. And she cautioned there's all sorts of reasons not to take that literally. And that's clearly true because welfare checks are 6% of the calls, which is about 1/16 of the calls, which means that if you took that literally, all calls combined take up about 175 officers worth of time, which would imply that if calls were completely eliminated, there were none of them, then you'd only reduce your force of sworn officers by 175 and you have 600 left, even though you had no calls. So another way of looking at it might be, you've got 800 officers, if you've sworn folks, if you think of 6% of the calls as being 6% of your total work, then you'd wind up with 48 FTE would be freed up if you stopped doing welfare checks. I think the answer is somewhere in between, but that's a pretty broad range. So I decided to see if you have an off-the-cuff answer to the following question. If the total number of calls and the hours spent on calls were declined by 50%, how many of your 800 sworn folks do you think you would still need to provide the current level of service?
If the 50% reduction.
There's some assumptions there. You're assuming 50% of the calls are
both. I'm saying let's assume both. Let's assume 50% of the calls
50% of the
representing
crime.
50% of the time.
Does 50% of the crime go away, or
of
just
the time? No, of the time spent.
Just the time spent and the calls.
Of the calls, and 50% of the time spent went away. How many of your 800 sworn personnel do you think you'd still need?
Well, my mind immediately went to the idea that not all 800 of us represent police officers taking calls, right? So, we have about 200, less than 300 right now that are taking calls, I believe. I haven't looked today. So trying to reconcile that in terms of holistically for the organization. For example, if that 50% of that went away, you know, do you need these commanders, these captains, these lieutenants, these sergeants, right, that don't necessarily feed into this concept?
Well, I mean, for one thing, we were told that the time spent on calls wasn't just time of patrol officers, I think. Chief Jovic, is that right?
Right. He highlighted a couple of those calls that are primarily like investigations and so forth. So your argument is then if those went away, or 50% of that went away, then those officers could do something else or not be needed. Yeah. I get where you're going.
And my assumption is that the superior officers, et cetera, to some extent support the people doing calls.
Yeah.
So if you drastically reduce the number of calls, you could reduce to some extent those higher levels too.
Yeah, in theory, yeah. You may not even need a chief of police for all I know. So, but I would say, you're right. I mean, this is an off-the-cuff comment that I hate to even commit to, but I'm going to say 25%. And I'm going to say 25% because I don't think to say 50, I don't think it's a 50-50 deal. I don't think you can take away 50% of the calls, 50% of the time and say you only need 50%. But certainly if that went away, there could be a reduction. And that's been my conversation the whole time, right? I've said many times from this bench, you can have all the work you want, you know, and let me know what it is that we need to do differently. But you know, there's right now, as of most of this almost current data, we're about 45, 50,000 calls for service into 2025. So Portlanders are calling at a high rate, and BOAC, to the best of their ability, are sending the resource that they have, which is the police.
I can't tell you how grateful I am that you're willing to give me that off-the-cuff answer. Really appreciate it. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question. I want to thank you all for the presentations that you've given. And I did a town hall meeting this Saturday over at REAP on I think it was about 108th in Halsey. I don't know if you're familiar with the REAP program. It's a youth organization that works with youth of color in the David Douglas Reynolds school districts in Park Rose. And there were two young ladies there, and I have to tell you, I didn't know how to quite answer it. I was thankful for Terrence Hayes for being there, but there were two young ladies there, and they said, "Counselor, I'm afraid because sometimes at night I hear gunshots. What am I supposed to do?" And that was very chilling. Even though they're kids and they're not my kids, and if they're afraid, if I was there, I would say, come and tell me what you're hearing and keep them close. But what do you tell young people who are afraid, who are in their homes and they're hearing gunshots? Should they call 911? What should we be referring kids to do?
I'm a believer, you know, I've said this for years. I think this is an inadequate system. I think that the system we've designed is not adequate. One of the major changes that occurred to the system is many of us in the room can remember when, if you wanted to talk to the police, you had to find a payphone or you had to go home and call them, right? 15 years ago or whenever it was, we put one of these in the hands of everybody over the age of 12. So we created this type of entry point into this type of system. Before it was sort of like this. And you drove down the road, you saw a problem, you had to make a decision. Am I going to go down to the gas station and call, or am I going to stop and help this person in real time, but do it on my own? This has granted immediate access to people, and no matter what their concern, no matter what their frustration, no matter what their impatience might be. So it's an inadequate system because it's taking this massive volume and trying to shove it into this routine of just still a few number of officers or whatever the receptacle might be. But the reason I say that is because I still believe in the system. It's what we have. And to answer your question, Counselor, absolutely, I think those people should call 911. I think they should absolutely. We cannot, as much as the work we're doing here, we cannot abandon the confidence and the hope and the belief or the assurance or the understanding. If at a minimum, at least we have a record. At least we'll have a record. They should. So I would affirm them to call when they hear that.
And I did. I offered that up to them, and they said they don't come out here. It's in District 1. It's in the numbers, and there's like, they don't come when we call. Terrence Hayes, who works for the Public Safety Department, he happened to be there, and he was talking about some ways in which his office can come out and talk to communities and ceasefire and that kind of thing. And he gave them their cards to say, if you need help, call us. And I don't know what kind of situation. Sometimes it can be somebody just in their house and they're just shooting off guns, just because. And then sometimes it could be some really serious stuff that's going on. You can never tell what the circumstance is around gunshots. So I just wanted to make sure that I was in line with what I should be telling young people, even though many don't feel that the response would be adequate enough from police. But I still think that we need to have it as an option.
I agree, couldn't agree more. And I just want you, it breaks my heart when there are Portlanders who think, why bother? Why bother? And that's a reflection on the police bureau, but I think it's also a reflection on the city as a whole, that we need to do better to demonstrate that responsiveness. And maybe it isn't 911, maybe it is alternatives, much like this council is considering and we are considering. But there is a reasonable expectation for people to be able to reach out to get some type of service. And I know that is a belief, particularly in East Portland.
Yes.
And I'm committed to changing that belief and understanding. Maybe we do a better job on a follow-up phone call. Hey, we heard you called, we drove around, we didn't see anything, but we just want you to know that we were here. Something like that could be a long ways towards helping people know at least we were there.
And just as a note, so I forget that I have the middle school that they go to, and they asked if I could come out sometimes and talk with them and talk to their class, and wanted to know if you could also come with me. I think that would be, there is a stigma for sure that we all have to deal with around law enforcement and communities of color. And also one of the ladies was an immigrant, so I know that there are some clear lines on what they will and won't do. So I told her that I would be willing to come out and talk to them, and they seemed pretty happy about that. But it would be great if we could have some sort of presence. I don't know if it's an officer with full regalia on or anything like that, but just to be able to know that they should, at least if they're afraid, that they should call 911.
Yeah, and I'd love to be a part of that, or have somebody be a part of that if I'm not available. So, I live for those kind of conversations. Thank you.
Counselor, if I can add just one thought to that. Of course, I would encourage that kid to call 911. Also recognizing and let him or her know that other people are also calling, because of the fact that everyone has these devices, that even if they don't that moment for something that is as noticeable as shots fired, inevitably we're going to be getting calls on that as well. Yeah, thank you.
Councilor Zimmerman.
Thanks, Chair. I don't know. I appreciate that we heard, given the situation in Old Town, we kind of heard two patrol vehicles will go to a priority call. And at that point, that officer is now in charge of whether or not calling more, is what I'm hearing from the description. I think that's helpful to kind of understand how a situation escalates. We've had a few references, colleagues, to things in my district. What I would say is there is no greater ground zero for me as the District 4 counselor than Old Town. And while we have some groups who I think have an honorable mission in their hopes, that they are having second and third order negative effects in that neighborhood, because I did hear from people who live in that zone, who have businesses in that zone, that those types of events have caused problems. And so I don't want to rush to too many judgments there. I don't know why 11 cars, I can't be the person on the ground who made that call, but my point is that if there are areas of town who want to invite that activity to occur, then that conversation should happen. But Old Town has been ground zero for so many services, for so many people coming in from other parts of town. I think we are also a little bit on edge in Old Town when anything kicks off. And so it hasn't been a great experience the last few weeks with this group, and I think that there are solutions at hand that we can work through, but it's hard to not respond as the counselor who has those areas who, I do get occasionally a call or a text from somebody about a thing going on in a variety of different areas, and you always wonder, like, okay, well, has that person called 911? Have they not? I always encourage people to call 911. I think I learned an important lesson a few years ago that people thought there was a way to access PSR without calling 911. And I thought, okay, we've got to fix this because people are choosing not to call 911. But at the same time, public is going to reach out to their elected representatives. And I think that we're going to be able to reach out to the leadership and say, quick note, something's going on. Right, and I think that's a responsible act because it's just a passing of information. But I'm gonna always look out for Old Town. I hope if you all have some connections in that group, we can work through it because it hasn't been a positive experience, and we've got to fix it. I hope it doesn't take 11 cops to fix something, but we've got to fix something because it has been unwelcomed. And I know that this Thursday they're planning on another event, auxiliary groups, that seems very targeted at a business based on some specific ethnicity issues that I think we've got to get in front of, because this stuff, we all know it cascades. And in Old Town, things cascade even faster. And that's why I think things have shown up. And as a representative of that, I would rather we show up in force quickly to stop a cascading effect than allow things to deteriorate to the point where, and we have seen it, stuff is happening in the streets and the cops are just observers because there's no way to stop it. So more commentary. Sorry, Chair, for taking down that path. We were in my district. I had to comment a little bit.
Understood. Councilor Canal.
Thank you. And I want to first say, Councilor Murillo pointed out that we've had the part of this whole conversation is about groups that are taking on tasks that government would take on. I think we've done that to police too, right? There's a lot that we've asked police to do, people who've sat up here historically that we've been told are outside of the scope of police's forte. And it's incredibly important that we recognize that and not put the blame on you for those requests. And also that we talk about the expectations, which is why I was really grateful, and thank you to the call allocation team for pointing out that there are some calls where the appropriate response is not to respond. And that's an important thing. It's a very narrow, small number, but I think that's an appropriate thing to bring up, and I appreciate that being highlighted. And because, Chief, you mentioned the idea that we can advise, I think it's important on the community engagement side, and as someone who's done that on public safety for 3 years at the city, this is a passion of mine, to say that I think throwing more resources at an imperfect approach might be less effective than adjusting that approach, and would also have the benefit of freeing up your resources. So I think, and I've seen this from you actually, because you've come to community events not in uniform and not with a visible weapon. And so because community engagement is not at its best when one party has a gun, and a known visible gun at that, I think that's particularly important because it creates a power imbalance. And then that's not to say that there aren't appropriate times for armed officers to be present. I think the Focused Intervention Team Community Oversight Group is actually a really good example of that. But you do have another model within PPB where we've seen Officer Hansberger and Assistant Chief Lavelle coming to events often unarmed as well. So I just kind of wanted to mention that. And then certainly there's the independent community engagement where the city is doing engagement about policing, but it's not necessarily the police doing it. PSEP comes to mind there. And that gets less pushback and less criticism than the kinds of comments that we just heard for holiday markets or for mutual aid events like my colleague brought up. So in other words, I guess the example that you gave about doing good police work at after the shooting that was outside of the Islamic Community School, those stories kind of tell the story themselves. The Dawson Park mission 2 weeks ago, right? Those tend to do the work themselves at helping to build trust that something's being engaged with. Because I hear the same thing that Councilor Smith is saying. I hear two reasons why people don't call the police. One is the fear that there may be someone who they want to be helped that might end up being harmed. The other is that there's no point sometimes when your car gets broken into and all of that. And so I offer this in the sense of trying to see if there's a way to free up the sorts of resources that can be used to pursue the investigations that help address that second concern, and in so doing, help minimize the types of interactions that can lead to the first concern. So with that said, like, I don't want to just talk. I did want to ask one specific question, which is how do you decide when an officer is going to do a community engagement event armed and in uniform versus in plain clothes? Because that's the single thing I hear the most about with relation to this.
A couple things. First of all, I mean, I have been, as I said, in this profession for over 3 decades. I've been in a lot of places in this city, both in uniform and out of uniform. And there are many, many community members who are very comfortable with me being in uniform, and I recognize that. Also, there are those that are not. But I don't want to cast a net that just says that all Portlanders are uncomfortable because a Portland police officer shows up in uniform. I'm proud of the uniform, proud of the members that wear the uniform, but I understand the sensitivity, as I've spoken to before and demonstrated, when not being in uniform. In terms of when people show up or in uniform or not in uniform, it's largely based around when they're on duty or not. If they're in a patrol function, when they're on duty in a patrol function. So let's go back to, let's just put this on the table for a minute, these counselor meetings. And, you know, in full transparency, that did not go as I'd planned. That was clunky, and that's on me. That's my responsibility from the start. I have been anticipating since November, upon the election and the creation of this council, the opportunity for increased community engagement. And what I mean by community engagement is cops and community in the same place in low conflict, low stress areas. That's, to me, is community engagement. As I said earlier, it's really difficult to establish trust and rapport when you're in the middle of a crisis. So in November, I started to prepare the organization for the expectation that in this new form of government, we would see an increased amount of opportunity to partner with our elected leaders and their constituents just by the nature of the new form of government. And that materialized in January when I noticed online posting of council meetings that were happening. And so my error in judgment was I thought that, you know, the other 799 thought like I did in terms of what community engagement is. The example that Councilor Murillo used with, you know, Brian Hughes, for example. I made some assumptions. I also failed to recognize some of the dynamics that were happening even in this very room and the reality that those have impact upon perception and on experience. So several misses right out of the gate. What I can say with unequivocal certainty is that the intent, but people care about our behaviors, not our intent. I understand that. But the intent was because I believe these are amazing spaces. Now, I had a conversation yesterday with Council President. A couple things I did not anticipate. One, you folks and your colleagues are out there a ton. I thought that this would be an occasional event. Kudos to each of you for the amount of time you're spending in your district and the number of community meetings you're holding. I thought we would be able to send an officer on a regular basis to hear. Clearly, we can't keep up. I mean, Councilor Smith's comment about being out there on Halsey, I didn't know about that. Clearly, we can't keep up. So we're reevaluating that whole process in terms of just what it looks like, and I think, you know, we've heard that we will be, you know, reaching out in the future. Second of all, I am not social media competent, to say the least, but I am learning that most of you and most of your colleagues do have a social media account, and that's one way that we can keep track. I saw Commissioner Ryan, or Councilor Ryan posted you, and I think Councilor Canal and I think Councilor Perugini were at an event over in the Lloyd District or somewhere on Broadway here recently. And so that's another way for us to stay informed and aware of, you know, what's being heard, what's being said, what's being put forward. So the short answer is most of the time when people show up in uniform, they're typically working. So we ask 2 patrol officers from East Precinct to go to Councilor Smith's meeting at 108th and Halsey while they're working, because that's their district. She's a representative in that district. She's going to hear from the community. I love to go to this stuff. I'm only one person, and I'm probably the worst to go because, as already been demonstrated here, you ask me a question, I don't know the answer. It seems like an answer I should have. So we are trying to get more of our membership into those places so they can have those conversations and provide that real-time feedback that's needed. Going forward, as I said, we're evaluating this whole process, and I just want to apologize and own that that's on me in terms of the direction that was given. I made some assumptions, didn't have a clear understanding organizationally, but that was, you know, the hope was to create more spaces. And what I would like to see and continue to have conversations about is how we can maximize those spaces, much like Councilor Smith just did. That may be the better approach. Hey, we're going to go have this conversation. We're going to go have this conversation in Old Town. Maybe there's an opportunity to join the District 4 councilors, et cetera. But a lot being said there, but I just wanted to kind of clear the air and own that in addition to answering your question, hopefully.
We're going to move to public testimony. I just wanted to say I really, really appreciate all the information you brought here today. A few weeks ago, I had no idea it was even possible to identify the amount of time spent on each call type, so I'm delighted. Mr. Kazi, I want to, a couple of weeks ago, we had a conversation where I said, well, couldn't there be some call types we just stopped responding to at all? And you said, they tried that in Gresham and the roof fell in. And they were mad at the 911 folks. So if you could just, we can take this up later, but just in 30 seconds, can you explain to me how the roof fell in Gresham?
Yeah, so, you know, we dispatch for multiple agencies, obviously, and there are decisions that are made at a command level to respond to certain call types. And in the case of Gresham, that did occur. And what it resulted with for BOAC is community members who are frustrated, calling to have something done, and us really not having a resource to be able to do something about it. And then referring them back to, in that particular case, the police, Gresham Police, and ultimately just going in circles and providing really poor customer service. You know, when we say, can we just stop doing something? Well, you can make any kind of decision like that, but there's always going to be some kind of outcome as a result. And if it results in more work for my staff, then I would absolutely say, no, we don't want to go down that path.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
We're going to move to public testimony. We have, I think, 20 people signed up. We have half an hour, so we ask people to limit themselves to 2 minutes. That might mean that we wind up with a few people that don't have time to testify. So if people could self-limit themselves to like 100 seconds instead, that would help. We're not going to hold you to that, but that would help let other people testify. Keelan, can you call the next item?
Public comment on Portland Police Bureau allocation of personnel time and budgetary impacts. Sure. First up, we have Tom Simonson, Brian Owendoff, and Alan Combs. Can you hear us? You're muted.
Yes.
Oh, there we go. Sorry.
My name is Tom Simonson, and I live in District 2. My hope is to encourage a better narrative to discussions about police and policing, removed from the binary, yay police or boo police, that has entrenched itself over decades. My hope for a better narrative is it's not anti-police to be pro-accountability. As city budgets are in the forefront, I don't think it's anti-police to expect a force that will not repeatedly act in ways resulting in the city on the hook to pay settlements totaling many millions of dollars in recent years. These payments are often from repeating the same actions and behaviors with no apparent change to training, bureau directives, discipline, or accountability. It's not anti-police to want good decision-making from PPB leadership. We've been told repeatedly that staffing levels are perilously low, with too few offers to answer 911 calls in a timely manner. So, though it's come up in this meeting, I still don't understand why leadership is pulling numerous on-duty officers off the street to attend counselor town halls. The town hall I attended, the 5 officers who were there for the better part of 2 hours engaged very little with anyone that I observed. If the goal of community outreach is to build better relationships with the people of Portland, I would like to suggest that one of the most efficient, cost-effective things that PPB could do to rebuild trust and positive relationships would be to embrace, encourage, and achieve the real, independent, transparent oversight that the voters of Portland overwhelmingly passed nearly 5 years ago. I feel doing so will build trust in ways exponentially beyond officers attending town halls. Thank you.
Great. I'm Brian Owendoff, proud resident and business owner in District 4. The rule of law is central to the success of a community where accountability is not only expected but required, whether it's from the highest authority to everyday citizens. It is the commitment to justice that ensures fairness and equity for all. However, Portland is at a critical juncture. We cannot ignore the impact of rising tide of mental health crises and substance abuse that many individuals, including those from out of state, bring to our city. We must hold accountable those states that contributed to the migration of the most vulnerable residents to Oregon, often without the necessary support systems in place. The dynamic puts immense strain on our resources and contributes to rising homelessness, substance abuse, and crime. Portland's police staffing is critically low, with just 789 sworn officers for a population of 630,500 residents, yielding one of the lowest ratios of officers per resident in the country. Our violent crime rate remains unacceptably high, as evidenced by 7 homicides this March already in Districts 1 and 2. The path forward must prioritize establishing law and order, which can only be achieved by increasing police force. This is not only a matter of rhetoric, it is a matter of safety for every Portland resident. I attended the D2 town hall where one of the counselors commented that recent police overtime was unnecessary, claiming the violence never occurred. Does he forget the 179 nights of riots we experienced in 2020 and 2021? The violence and destruction we witnessed caused billions in damage to our city's properties, businesses, and reputation. It cannot be dismissed as a non-issue now. Furthermore, anti-police rhetoric from some members on city council visible on platforms like Instagram and Blue Sky is harmful. These posts undermine law enforcement's role in keeping the community safe and discouraging potential investors from bringing capital into Portland. I'm calling on each of you to recognize the gravity of the situation. Portland is on the brink. Blight, a state of destruction and decay, has already begun to creep into certain neighborhoods. We cannot allow it to spread. I fully support the recommendations by Chief Day to increase funding for the police. Thank you.
Alan Combs.
Thank you. Good afternoon, councilors. My name is Alan Combs. I've been a resident of District 3 now for 25 years, and I appreciate the opportunity to provide comments today. I very much appreciated the information shared today by BOEC, Emergency Communications, and Portland Police, or PPB, and have 2 specific reactions. First, I suggest you follow up on Councilmember Novik's questions and actually look at the data. You have lots of call type data. I think that you'll find that although there is a role for expanded PSR or Project Respond, many welfare checks require police participation. In just the last week, at least 10 houses in my neighborhood were visited upon by a clearly troubled person. He had a metal rake and he was not afraid to use it. He threatened residents with bodily harm and damaged a lot of property. He appeared to get the mental health care he needed later that morning, which I should add was out of the normal time that PSR is available, but he got the right mental health care help, but he needed police assistance because he was dangerous. Second, I want to encourage all counselors, but especially those on this committee, in addition to visiting the BOEC, which you've been invited to multiple times, but to get into a patrol car for a ride-along or attend the next community academy. I know that Councilors Novick, Smith, and Canal have attended, as well as Councilor Ryan in the past, but clearly from some of the questions asked today, I think some additional direct observation is needed, honestly, by all of you. For the remainder of my comments, I want to address community policing in Portland. For many, you might think of that as being some old school notion of cops on the beat around on a regular basis, but that's not community policing today. Community policing can be done in several targeted ways. The first is getting well-trained and diverse officers. And the way you get that is to fund the budget as recommended by PPB. Those new officers will reflect the ethnicity and racial diversity of Portland today. The second is Portland.
Sorry, Mr. Combs, we need to move on. I apologize.
Next up, we have Marie Tyval, Todd Littlefield, and Terrence Hayes. Marie is online.
Are you ready for me? Sorry.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Marie Tyval, and I'm here as a person of white privilege to testify that PPB needs to be subjected to budget cuts. Straight Roots reported in August 2024 that PPB's annual budget increased by 42%, nearly $88 million since 2016. However, the city's population only increased by 3% during that time, and at times since 2020, PPB's personnel was nearly 20% below 2016 staffing levels. And yet, PPB's data never shows a resulting crime wave. Only in short time frames did reported crime increase even since 2020, and there is no concrete evidence tying decreased police staffing to those short-term spikes in specific types of crime. PPB also seems to have plenty of personnel who have a lot of spare time to intimidate a local mutual aid group. As reported by Community Freestar IG account on March 6, cops swarmed the block with at least 11 cop cars and began pushing folks. 3 community members were detained and cited. 1 community member was pulled onto the street by multiple cops and then cited for being on the street. As reported by independent media in a video on the Portland Homeless Facebook page on March 13th, Jesse Burke, former campaign manager for Nathan Vasquez, chair of the Old Town Community Association, and board president of District 4 Coalition, apparently called the cops again on the Community Freestar. Jesse was referred to specifically by cops as their spokesperson. The woman in sunglasses also seen in the video, timestamp 140, is Darlene Urbit Garrett, executive director of the District 4 Coalition. Also present on March 13th was J.R. Ujifusa, a district attorney at Multnomah County, no doubt thanks to Jesse's relationship with Nathan Vasquez. In summary, while PPB insists they can't be subjected to budget cuts, someone like Jesse Burke can apparently easily weaponize her relationship with the cops, the DA, and in her role as the board president of District 4 Coalition, an organization funded by Portland taxpayers, to summon the cops and DA staff at will to harass volunteers handing out life-saving supplies. Thank you for your time today.
Todd Littlefield.
Good afternoon, councilors. Todd Littlefield, Lents Neighborhood Livability Association. I very much appreciate the opportunity to share with you today what I've experienced living across the street from the multi-use path, which runs along I-205 and is in a residential neighborhood of many working class people and is a safe route to school, safe route to Max, safe route to TriMet, and built as a path for all to use for bicycling, jogging, walking your dog, etc. No trespassing signs are every 100 yards. Since August, the path lights have been out, yes, not working. Why? An organized group has ripped all the wiring out. The devastation my neighborhood has experienced since 2018 cannot be overstated. I've had rifles pointed at my head, bullets shot into my shop, bombs going off in the middle of the night next to our homes, intentionally, not by mistake. Slept on my living room couch for 60 straight nights, so I have multiple exits in fear and in case my house is firebombed. I've been intimidated, threatened, assaulted, lost $100,000 in rental revenue. I could go on. I have not called the police in any of these matters because of 2 things. 1, no faith that bad actors will be held accountable, and 2, retaliation. We live on eggshells, knowing any moment chaos can and does break out. But what's the worst part? The oppression. If I knocked on 1,000 of my neighbors' doors, my story would be common, not rare. And they'd all agree, we want more officers, we need more officers, we need bad behavior held accountable, and the public safety threats removed, the livability hell solved, and the quality of life destruction ended. Please support our needs. Thank you.
Next up, we have Terrence Hayes, Vadim Mazirsky, and Tiana Tozer. I don't believe Terrence has joined us. Go ahead, Vadim.
Oh, thank you. It's good seeing everybody. There was a lot of facts and figures today, which I'm sure smarter people than I will be able to make sense of, but I just want to kind of bring it down to ground level. Councilor Canal mentioned some of the calls about drug dealing that happened in some parts of the city and whether the police were responding quickly enough to that. I know quite a bit about that. I live in Goose Hollow, and we've had drug dealing over there. I've talked to people in the Stadium District as well as Cooch Park and the drug dealing over there. We had some drug dealers set up by the Vista Bridge right across the street from where a school bus would drop off kids. The people in that area came out, the parents came out, and they asked the people to move. They said, we know that this is something that happens in Portland, not where the kids are, please. And honestly, some people did move. But some people did not. Some people were belligerent, they threatened people, they stayed. Some people do what people do. They called the police and they asked for help. Unfortunately, the police are understaffed. They said it would take time to get there. It took a few days and finally they were able to make their way there. And guess what? Those individuals moved away and parents did not have to be concerned about their kids walking around drug dealing, fentanyl use, and all that goes along with that. We need the police to be adequately staffed in order to address those issues quickly so that parents, so that adults, so that grandparents don't have to worry. That's what I'm asking here about. And we talked about community engaged policing. It's almost exactly 10 years ago that President Obama came out with the recommendations of 21st century policing, a task force that entailed university professors, that had religious leaders, that had nonprofit organizations, civil rights leaders. Their fourth pillar was about community engaged policing. And they said that police on their police time should be encouraged to attend community events and be there and hear from the community. They come to my neighborhood association, we talk to them, we tell them what we're seeing, they respond, and that makes people at the very least feel better, but sometimes hopefully crime is stopped because we're reported in that way. So please fully fund the police so we get the services that we all deserve. Thank you. Oh, by the way, I'm here for Partnership for Progress. Thank you.
Tiana Tozer.
Tiana Tozer, District 2. I'm extremely concerned about the potential cuts to the police budget. In Maslow's hierarchy of needs, safety and security are second only after physiological needs, breathing, eating, sleeping. Most people in a budget deficit cut luxury items first. Police are integral to public safety, not a luxury item. I have been in 3 war zones as a humanitarian aid worker, unarmed. For the first time in my life, I have started carrying a weapon because I don't feel safe in Portland. I work in Old Town. Ironic. The police budget was cut in June 2020. By 2022, Portland saw record high homicides. In 2021, Portland broke its record for traffic fatalities. It is my understanding that the police budget is still under where it was before those cuts. My biggest concern is the unintended consequences that nobody wants to talk about. We saw those unintended consequences after Hardesty's budget cuts to the police. The cuts were supposedly because police were killing black and brown people, when in truth, 50% of the people killed by Portland police are people with mental illness. That fact changes the narrative. It changes the solution. What I want to point out to you is that I live on the edge of a rich white neighborhood. In the 20 years that I've lived there, I've heard shots fired exactly once. The majority of traffic fatalities in Portland happen on the east side in our most diverse and low-income neighborhoods, as does most of our gun violence. I would highly encourage you, before cutting the police budget, that you make an extra good faith effort to reach out to the communities most impacted by gun and traffic violence. These are Portlanders who are so busy surviving that they don't have time to figure out the online forum. They may not even have internet, and they certainly don't have time to come to a public meeting where they only get 2 minutes to speak. These are the voices that you need to seek out, not the activists that were on the Police Accountability Commission who were handpicked because they had a beef with police, but the everyday people who will bear the brunt of the violence even when these budgets are cut. We can't solve our problems by pushing forward false narratives. It is incredibly important that you seek out the voices of people who will be most impacted rather than listening to privileged white people or activists that are speaking for them and taking away their voices. I hope you'll do what's best for all Portlanders. Keep the police budget.
Next up, we have Loretta Guzman, Corinne Frechette, and Aaron Schmuntz. Loretta.
Okay. Hi, my name is Loretta Guzman. I own Bison Coffee House. I was born and raised here in the city of Portland. I live in District 2, and my business is in District 2. Our city is in a struggle of life and death. I say this as I live it in my life and in my district. Since I last testified in February 2025, we had 3 homicides in less than 24 hours in my district, and one of those killed was one of my nephew's friends. I pray that each of those that have been killed are in peace. As we have these homicides that are affecting my community, we have little kids that are being left without their fathers. We as the family members are struggling to pick up the pieces. Our kids are going through trauma of looking for their fathers, their uncles, their brothers, and crying themselves to sleep as they do not understand. Each of you has the choice to help make our district and our community safer or continue the downward spiral. I have little ones that are affected by this, and I will continue the way, if we continue the way we are, one day it will be them next. I do not have a political motive. It is life for some of us. Some of us live in a state of emergency. Some of you will never experience that. We do not have public safety, and when we are calling for help, the response time is long, and we are losing lives in the process of trying to decide if we really need public safety. We do need it throughout our whole city. By reducing the police budget, this does affect my community, and I say this with lived experience. If you choose to continue to take our safety, there are grave consequences to people of color. I am speaking for my kids' future. I am a supporter of Going Home 2 that stepped up when my business was vandalized and also when my nephew was murdered. I am also a supporter of victims of violence offensives. Choose to give us life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which is in our Constitution. Public safety is a fundamental right. Thank you.
Corinne Frechette.
Our Office of Violence Prevention stands on a model of upstream intervention. That very model is meant to inhibit criminal activity, and therefore, through that lens, it is hard to quantify criminality that never took place. What we can quantify is the fiscal investments we have made in those prevention programs, which come out to be multi-million dollars. In the fall of 2024, large investments of police overtime were made to uphold free speech during the electoral period, as well as local residents' rights to peace and safety. The remarkable prevention efforts paid off, and we did not suffer from violence onto our residents or vandalism onto our buildings. Similarly to the prevention efforts exerted by the OVP, it is hard to quantify crimes that did not take place. Some politicians characterize those police overtime investment efforts as frivolous, but for the actual downtown members, those efforts were lifesavers to maintain the fragile ecosystem we live in and we work in. It is necessary to highlight the lack of logic when sometimes praising prevention and sometimes denigrating it, depending on ideology, not on social impact. We have to address the streak of 7 homicides in District 1 and in District 2. And as of Sunday, a child in District 2 was struck with gunfire and suffered life-threatening wounds. All this in the span of 20 days. We sometimes hear the perception of danger in Portland exceeds the daily reality that we live. Not for those 8 people, not for many of us. Our police bureau is staffed at half the recommended rate, and it relies on overtime in the same manner that BOEC had to, while ramping up hiring and stabilizing the workforce. We urge you to support full public safety funding during this transitional time so Portland can once again be safe and peaceful for all, not just the politically connected who can safely retreat outside of Portland.
Next up is Aaron Schmatz.
Chairs, committee, thank you for the time to speak today. I apologize, I'm out of town, so I'm not there in person. As we continue to discuss public safety, staffing, overtime, and the overlay of our entire service group, I simply want to encourage us to consider why we are doing so. The interactions between first responders and the public are amongst the core services that we provide as a city. We know that we've had significant struggles in answering those calls, and BOIC has demonstrated their significant gains in answering more quickly. And if we do not have enough services to send in response, those efforts will be for naught. Further, trust in systems in the systems coming are critical. Our efforts cannot simply be about putting out fires. Our citizens deserve to understand, know, and believe in both the services and the city employees coming to render them. Our efforts should not only be to fully staff our first response system so they can respond to emergencies, but also to allow for relationship and trust building, as well as follow-up investigations so that Portlanders receive the closure, justice, and safety that they deserve. To answer Chair Novik's question earlier on a 50% reduction in call load, I would suggest that if the Police Bureau had that level of reduction, this would free up our members to lean into community policing, follow-up, provide closure for victims, re-engage in our youth-facing programs, fully staff our criminalists, detectives, traffic, domestic violence, human trafficking, and drug units. These are the connections that our community is begging for. I strongly recommend that we acknowledge that we are building a flying ship. Portlanders need help, and they need relationship today and in the future. Our efforts to lower overtime costs, provide better service, send the right first responder, provide warm handoffs and social services, lowering response times, and connect our responders to the community they serve are not mutually exclusive. Having pushed a patrol car around for 16 years, I can confidently tell you that the services needed or services rendered are commonly not the services originally requested, because chaotic scenes and circumstances change in real time. Our system being nimble, responsive, well-staffed, and trusted to have the necessary bandwidth to serve is our pathway forward. Thank you.
Next up, we have Tyler Fellini, Max Steele, and Charlie Michelle Wesley.
Good afternoon, councilors. My name is Tyler Fellini. I'm a registered lobbyist for Portland Jobs with Justice, but I'm here today as a renter, resident, and everyday person in District 3. We just heard a lot from PPB about data and apps and categories to classify calls officers respond to, and I wonder what category harassment and intimidation would fall in. Earlier this month, multiple officers, including a sergeant, showed up at a peaceful mutual aid event in Old Town. They were not responding to a crime, and it was not the first time they'd shown up to harass participants. In fact, there appears to be a pattern of escalation as officers have become more and more confrontational with that mutual aid group. They were there, it seems, as a favor to Jesse Burke, a politically connected business owner who served as the campaign manager for newly elected DA Nathan Vasquez. In fact, one of Vasquez's senior deputy attorneys was also present at that event. This wasn't an isolated incident. Just weeks earlier, armed officers also showed up at town halls hosted by Canal and Murillo, both of whom have expressed criticisms of the police. These officers were not responding to emergencies, they weren't out solving crimes, they were there, seemingly, to send a message. Chief Day wants us to think this is no big deal, we just don't know all the facts, these instances were perhaps just a misunderstanding. But Councilor Murillo said that she trusts what she sees with her eyes, and I think most Portlanders do the same. So my question is, if the Bureau is so understaffed, why are officers being deployed in numbers to harass peaceful events and political meetings? Why are public resources being used in ways that look more like political intimidation and less like public safety? Portland is facing a $100 million budget shortfall. This is a budget year, and every dollar matters. I urge you to carefully scrutinize how PPB allocates its personnel and ensure that additional resources, if any, go toward real public safety, not political favors. Portlanders deserve accountability, not harassment. Thank you. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. Max Steele.
On March 14th, I was meeting with a group of neighbors in Couch Park in Northwest Portland. We were there, as we are every Friday, to discuss improving our park and neighborhood, mostly through activation of public spaces. I appreciate that this council acknowledges activation as a piece of public safety. On this particular Friday, I called 911 because a woman in the park, who was clearly very distressed, was rapidly escalating into violence. What began as a seemingly minor disagreement between two park goers quickly spiraled out of control. I began by calling Rangers, but when she became violent, I switched to 911. This is a public park with children present, and the speed of escalation was alarming. We value our park rangers and Portland Street Response, but there are moments when those options are no longer appropriate, where police officers are needed. I have heard counselors refer to programs like Portland Ceasefire or Portland Street Response as alternatives to policing. They are not. They are alternatives to police response. They are complementary to community policing. This woman was, in that moment, violent. She was particularly aggressive toward men. When I relayed this to the dispatcher, 2 female officers arrived within a few minutes, de-escalated the situation, and offered to connect her with services. Their kindness and professionalism were evident from minute 1. This woman, who had just been lashing out at people, was treated with compassion and care. The momentum of the situation was interrupted, no one was badly hurt, and she was given options on what happened next. This is the policing we want, and it is possible with properly staffed and trained bureaus. What I saw that Friday was an example of what we can and should see every day, and I support Chief Day's recommendation to maintain this momentum. Portland deserves this level of public safety. Thank you.
Charlie Michelle Wesley.
Thank you. I'm Charlie Michelle Wesley, descendant of multiple Northwest tribes on this our land. Investing in qualified alternatives to policing saves money, such as a fully funded 24/7 trauma-informed Portland Street Response, truly dependent police accountability oversight such as CVPA, social support and life-saving services providing harm reduction. These reduce costly lawsuits for excessive and deadly force, lowering arrest, incarceration, and deaths, proven to reduce reliance on unqualified policing. On a smaller budget, freeing up police to focus on other pressing issues, including, how about some healing self-care and some long-term training on anti-racist and attending to their own trauma, versus using multiple cops to target or marginalize and criminalizing poverty. Where is the humanity in that? It's ridiculous for cops to respond to a mutual aid event anytime, but during a budget crisis and use intimidation at town halls. Apparently core values be cursed when those who entertain and serve the dominant, the powerful, the financially secure, and the well-connected because of who they were endorsed by and believe arrest is the solution to human suffering can snap their fingers and over-policing occurs to intimidate, harass, and abuse our vulnerable. How about reducing the bloated police budget to help versus hinder? I highly respect and rely on those city councilors who actually work towards solutions that align with our core city values. To name a few, whereas violence towards people of color is condemned, whereas lived experience is valued, whereas fiscal resiliency, equity, and the needs for our most vulnerable populations will be the focus of every budget decision. Courageous support by our city leaders allow alternatives and an oversight system to flourish despite objections. Strong values can provide stability, direction, and reveal ethical character during times of adversity with integrity. Over-resourced, not over-policing, is a humane solution and addresses the budget. The status quo is not working. We need heroes too. Thank you.
Next up, we have Corey Seamer, followed by Michelle Milla and Ikla Burnham. Go ahead, Corey.
Hi, thank you guys for your time. I've read some of the same things about the Portland Police Bureau being understaffed when compared to other similar-sized American cities. Given my experience in the Stadium neighborhood in Northwest Portland, I believe it. Open-air drug dealing, public drug use, menacing behavior, trespassing, and property crime are common in my community. While some seem to believe that this sort of crime is just part of living in the city, I can tell you from my experience living in New York for 19 years, that is patently false. I believe that a fully and adequately funding the Portland Police Bureau without cuts is a critical component of public safety and the best way to eliminate the flagrant criminal behavior that is pervasive in this city. In my almost 20 years of living in New York, I only had to call the police once. I have lost count of how many times I've called them here. Nobody ever trespassed on my property. I rarely saw broken glass on the street. I don't recall ever being threatened with violence, nor do I ever recall seeing anyone use hard drugs or deal drugs in public. Before I arrived in the city 3 years ago, my condo was broken into. That was my welcome to Portland. Since then, I have been threatened unprovoked on 3 separate occasions. I regularly see smashed car windows. I often catch people trespassing in our fenced backyard. I see public drug use daily and frequently witness drug deals, including while this was going on outside my window. Most of what I have described, I have seen from my windows in a residential area directly across the street from a school. I and the people in my community should not have to worry about being assaulted and stolen from, and nobody should have to watch people dealing drugs and doing drugs, especially school children. Yet this is our reality. When people with a criminal mentality are allowed to get away with crime in the public domain with perceived impunity, it encourages yet more crime. So when I consider the Portland Police Bureau allocates its resources, I'd like to see more resources allocated to the street crime I see every day. Thank you for your time, and that's all I have. Thank you.
We're now at 4:30, but I understand that we might be able to go a little longer and hear the remaining testifiers if the rest of the committee is okay with that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Michelle Miller.
Thank you, councilors. I live in the Stadium neighborhood, District 4. Safety is a basic human right and shared foundation for any functioning city. Without it, nothing can thrive. The Stadium neighborhood has experienced firsthand what happens when safety resources are stretched too thin, delayed response times, diminished trust, and a sense that we're out here on our own. We need officers not only to respond, but to prevent, and that means engaging with our communities. Walking the blocks, addressing the current and persistent public safety issues. Councillor Canal, thank you for walking our neighborhood and seeing the conditions firsthand. Councillor Zimmerman, thank you for taking the time to meet with us in person and engaging directly with us on the emergency declaration we are pursuing. These collaborations are valuable because they are on the ground, not behind bureaucracy. And in the same vein, the allocation of PPB time should reflect the needs on the ground. That means more time spent on the field, in the field, on foot, on patrol, engaging with our communities. The bike squad is a tremendous asset and has made an impact in our area, and we appreciate that. Those are the things that we need more of. We want to work with the PPB, alongside the PPB, to co-produce safety. So what does that look like? We need to know that they're present, engaged, and empowered to act. I urge you to support Chief Day's recommendation to sustain the momentum behind current recruitment efforts. And please allocate PPB personnel time toward rebuilding trust through visibility, responsiveness, and consistent support in our neighborhoods. And thank you for this opportunity to engage.
Next up, and I apologize if I mispronounce this name, Ikla Burnham.
Ikwa.
Thank you.
Thank you, very welcome. Unlike a lot of people here, I didn't prepare a speech or anything, so I'm going to speak, as you guys say, off the cuff. I've been in Portland for 3.5 years. And all the time I've been here, I've been in 2 situations. One of them involving a stabbing at the bar, where if I hadn't been the first one on scene, the person would have bled out. I've been at another situation with the police coming with us being at a protest, leaving a protest, seeing a lady have a being in a mental crisis, and about 6-7 cops immediately pull up on this lady, guns drawn. One of them has, I think it's like a 50mm cannon. I was able to de-escalate that woman by my will. I had somebody else there with me. But me and this other community member, we were able to de-escalate this woman to the point to where she would comply with police when they were ready to shoot her. They was not ready to give her the opportunity to comply. They were quick to violence, as we have seen time and time again. So when I hear other people talk about, white people talk about how oppressed they are, I would really like to just clarify. You can't talk about being oppressed when you have white privilege. When you have a privilege that I'm not afforded. When you live in a community where police will respond to, when you live in a community where black people like me are afraid to call the police, I can tell everybody in this room, there will never be a day that I will never call a cop, because if I do, I'm afraid I'm gonna get myself killed or get somebody else killed. When you talk about community safety, It actually has to be a community. It actually has to be a people willing to stand up for one another and not rely on a system that we know is broken or working as it should. I yield the rest of my time. Have a great day.
Next up, we have Karen Shirai online.
Okay, there we go. Okay. Hello, my name's Karen Shirai. I'm a business owner in downtown Portland, and I'm speaking as a concerned business owner and a member of the Stadium Hood community. I want to express my deep worries regarding the potential loss of the Central Bike Squad and the Neighborhood Response Team units, which play an indispensable role in our ongoing fight against crime in this area. Over the past week alone, I have witnessed firsthand the alarming rise in criminal activity that threatens not only our businesses, but the very fabric of our community. In just 7 days, I experienced 4 shoplifting incidents and attempted tagging of my business that I fortunately intercepted, and my employees faced threats of violence. We had vandalism with a man carelessly throwing a recycling bin onto my property with contents strewn about. I even had to extinguish a fire set right next to my building. And to add insult to injury, a drunken patron of the bar desecrated our space, and I discovered multiple instances of drug use right on my property. It's not just a series of unfortunate events. It's a distressing pattern that showcases the urgent need for increased support and resources for our law enforcement agencies. The Central Bike Squad has proven to be an invaluable asset to the Portland Police Bureau and to the safety of our downtown area. Their presence provides not only a deterrent to criminal activity, but also fosters a sense of security and community trust. We cannot afford to lose this vital resource. The safety of our businesses, our employees, and our community members hangs in the balance. Thank you.
Next up, we have Brian Kotlov, followed by Bob Weinstein.
Good afternoon. My name is Brian Kotlov. I live in District 4, and I'm a parent of 3 young children. My wife and I have chosen to raise our family in Portland because we love this city. But like so many parents, I'm deeply concerned about whether Portland is doing enough to ensure that families of all backgrounds can continue to call this city home. Public safety isn't just another budget line item. It's foundational. It's the difference between families choosing to stay in Portland or leaving for a nearby suburb. It's the difference between kids walking to school with confidence or parents feeling they need to drive them. It's the difference between a thriving city and one where businesses, families, and visitors slowly start to disappear. Right now, we are failing to meet even the bare minimum level of public safety. Portland has fewer officers per resident than nearly every comparable city. Response times are too long. Community policing needs to drastically increase. When families don't feel safe, they leave. And when families leave, schools close, businesses suffer, and Portland's future dims. An increase in police staff is not about policing for the sake of policing. It's about ensuring that when Portlanders call for help, someone actually shows up. It's about making sure that families feel safe enough to keep choosing Portland as home. I urge you to fully support Chief Day's recommended staffing levels. We can't afford to let public safety become an afterthought. The future of this city depends on it. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Bob Weinstein, Northwest Portland. I'm here today to underscore the urgent need to prioritize public safety in the city's budget decisions. The fiscal challenges that you and we face are not just budget line items, they're matters of life and death. The stark reality is that despite a recent decline from the peak in 2022, Portland's homicide rate in 2024 remained alarmingly high, 3 times the pre-pandemic average, and dramatically exceeding the rates in comparable cities like Seattle and San Francisco. These are not mere statistics. They represent lost lives, shattered families, and a community living under the shadow of persistent violence. Consider the following. 1, Portland ranks near the bottom among the 50 largest U.S. cities in terms of police staffing. The chronic understaffing is not just a bureaucratic shortfall, It's a direct threat to public safety. Fewer officers mean longer response times, reduced community presence, and increased vulnerability for every Portland resident. 2, a comprehensive 2022 study revealed a need for 6 new fire stations to address the city's evolving demographic landscape. This isn't just about expansion, it's about equity. Currently, response times vary dramatically across different neighborhoods, creating a dangerous lottery system where zip codes can determine whether emergency medical help arrives in time to save a life. Portland Street Response has demonstrated tremendous potential. It should be expanded to 24/7 to increase its impact and in coordination with the Police Bureau to provide much needed resources to address crises more effectively. You and your colleagues face difficult budget decisions. Protecting core public safety services must not be up for debate. The budget is not just a document, it's a statement of community values. You can send a clear message. Public safety is not negotiable, no neighborhood is disposable, and no resident is expendable. Thank you for your time, your service, and your commitment to public safety.
That completes testimony.
Tuesday, April 8th. This meeting of the Community and Public Safety Committee is adjourned.